When the disciples saw him walking on the lake, they were terrified. "It's a ghost," they said, and cried out in fear. But Jesus immediately said to them, "Take courage, it is I. Don't be afraid."
You happy?
Yeah, I'm good. We're good. We're rolling, man.
We're rolling. Hey, if you're watching on YouTube, you're going to notice something here. I'm a little less feral than typical today. Did a little something with myself. Let me know if you like it. But there's a reason why.
I was just like, what is this occasion? Because, I mean, I will come in and...
Well, I noticed you didn't dress up.
I did not dress up. This is news to me, man.
Well, Lane Diven didn't understand the assignment here. But here we are.
It's, bringing back some memories from school, I guess.
Yeah,
But,
well, it's
here we are.
Hey, today is a celebration, all right? For anybody that doesn't know what transpired this weekend, we officially have the newest member of the ultra running community here at Next in Line Development.
Yeah?
Mr. Lane Diven, congratulations, sir.
Oh, man. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. You want to share with the folks at home what it is that you knocked out, completed this weekend?
Yeah, absolutely. We had an awesome road trip all the way up to the Panhandle, north of Amarillo a little bit. We traveled up to Fritz, Texas, knocked out a 50K, ended up being about just shy of 34 miles, I think. A little bit less than 5,000 feet of elevation. So it was a good time.
It was a good time.
It's a good time, dude.
Y'all heard it here first. Lane Divon.
Mm-hmm.
Div. The Divinator. Dane Livin. I thought about this one earlier. Lane Divins. No, that was bad.
So where are you going?
I came up with something different earlier. I can't remember what it was. Regardless, known by so many different names. Yeah. He's been a crew chief for so many. He's been a pacer for so many.
Mm-hmm.
Been there, supportive, involved, just helping people chase their goals, pursue what they set their mind to, and just being a rock and a little bit of a drill sergeant and a David Goggins-esque type personality, yelling at us on the trails, making us yell back at him. Man, he did it. He knocked it out. He is officially in the Ultramarathon Club here. And I don't think you're going to stop there. But, man, I wanted to take this first section of this podcast before we dive into Scripture, and I really want to unpack what transpired. We hopped in the car. We drove to Lubbock and then drove an hour and a half north. I don't think I ever want to do that again.
You want to drive all the way up there again?
Yeah. No, it was beautiful country. Loved it. It was awesome.
We learned about mesas.
We learned about mesas.
Plateaus.
And buttes, actually.
Yeah.
Didn't see any buttes, but we learned about them.
Yeah, man. It's a learning experience all the way around. So
it was. So I guess, okay, I'm gonna switch the gears here. I'm gonna interview you a little bit, and I want to get some insight here because this is a big deal. You ran your first ultramarathon. There's people out there that are looking to do their first whatever it is, whether it's their first 5K, their first CrossFit workout, whether it's signing up for some kind of race, half marathon, some kind of deal, or maybe they're looking to dive into something in life that is just their first thing, career, religion, whatever, right? So going into this race, you're finishing up a pretty good training block and you're starting to taper. How are you feeling right then and there in the taper?
I was feeling good, dude. Mentally, I was 100%. 110% there. I felt really strong in all of the runs that we did go through. We knocked out all the lifts I've been doing, knocking out. We touched base on it a few times. Just the consistency that I had throughout this training block was probably better than any other I've had this far, actually. And
Beautiful.
So, yeah, I mean, going into the taper, super, super solid, man. Felt really strong after a 26-mile long run. We led into a true 2-week taper. And, dude, I mean, I just felt really, really good overall, for sure. So,
Well, that's good, man. Well, after you finished up the taper, after you were getting ready, we jumped in the car at the end of that 2-week taper, I should say, and headed towards Amarillo. As we're getting headed over towards the Panhandle, deep West Texas, North Texas, whatever you want to call it, what are some of the feelings going on there? Did any of that change? You said you were really invested. You felt really confident because you hit all your notes, all your runs, all your workouts. You were consistent. Did you have any different changes in mindsets or attitude as we were getting up there? Did you get nervous at all?
No, not particularly. You know, for me, this was just so many different things to me, I guess. You know, because I've been a part of the community, you know, ever since you dove into it, right? In just different capacities. And you know, I've gone through, and I've kind of become just, I don't know, it's not anything wild for me to conceive like people going out and running these things anymore.
Yeah.
And for me too, it's just like there's just another step along the path for me. You know what I mean? Like, this wasn't the end all be all of my events or my training or anything like that. And though it meant a lot to me and it held a significant amount of weight, like it didn't affect like my mindset in any way of like being nervous as to whether I was going to be able to complete it, or anything in that regard. So,
okay.
Yeah, I mean, I felt really strong, felt comfortable going up there for sure. So
Well, that's good. One area that probably would have given some people some cause for pause or whatever, you found out when in your training plan or when leading up to the race that the course was going to change drastically, and why?
So I don't know. I guess that's probably 3 weeks prior to the race starting. The course map had changed due to all of the wildfires that were up there in the Panhandle. And I actually reached out to Briston, the race director. I was like, hey, I mean, obviously we have all these wildfires going on up there. Like, is this race even going to still happen? And he's like, yeah, absolutely. We're still going to put it on and make sure we get out there and get this thing done. And so, you know, we went through and I went ahead and signed up for it after getting confirmation of that. And, you know, literally like a day later, that's when they posted the course change on there. And so what was originally supposed to be like an out and back one direction and then an out and back the opposite direction, ended up being just an out and back twice going in the same direction. And so they just essentially cut off half the course and you just ran the other half twice.
Okay.
So.
And whenever they changed that, did they allude to any changes in elevation profiles or anything like that at the time?
What are you alluding to, Mr. Pitts?
I think we're going in that direction for sure. But did you?
No, they did not.
They did not. So you assumed it was still going to be what kind of elevation going into this race?
Man, originally we were expecting 1,500 feet or so elevation.
Okay, so pretty settled.
Yeah. I mean, nothing that was gonna be super crazy or anything. I mean, you know, obviously it's not just gonna be, you know, running down the coast where it's just flat the entire time or divine. But
what are you talking about, dude? Our 10-mile loop that yields 300 feet of elevation change.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
Yep, absolutely. No, I mean, I think it was in the neighborhood like 1,500 plus or minus maybe a little bit. So, that's what we were expecting going into it. And whenever they sent out the new course update, it was not through the same, I guess, like map company per se that the original course was posted on.
Mm-hmm.
So it didn't give you any insight as to like what the elevation looked like on the course. It was just, here's the overall like layout of the course essentially. and the condition of the course. So like going into it, I didn't even know how long the original I didn't know how long the new course trail, like I don't know how long it was. So
You didn't know your total mileage for the day was going to be or anything. Still expecting that 1,500 feet of elevation.
Relatively, yeah.
And then on top of that, I believe whenever I looked at this race's website, doing some homework as well, it displayed that the average temperature was going to be between 46 and 72 or 75 degrees, something like that.
Yeah.
So pretty average days, comfortable temperatures. You expect it to be windy, I'm sure, being in the Panhandle.
Yeah, I definitely expected it to be windy. I was expecting some cooler temperatures. And that's something I was really looking forward to because, I mean, for me, I'm just such a hot-natured individual. Like, I run really well when it's cold outside.
Sure.
And so I was like, nice. We got the Panhandle. It's going to be dry. It's going to be cool. It's going to be a little windy. But, yeah, I mean, just going into it, I just felt confident. And, yeah.
Yeah, relatively flat and fast course.
Yeah, that's what we were expecting.
It's beautiful. And I guess with that, so we're laughing a little bit and we're alluding to some changes in that. But let's fast forward a little bit. You've gone through the drive up there. Mm-hmm. We've gone through the drive up there. Mm-hmm. The night before, you ate the traditional meal of some ground beef and rice.
I did.
Which, if I'm not mistaken, you ate that tonight before you came to record too.
Matter of fact, I did.
That's a Launay Devon staple. It's some habits,
hits all the nutrients that you need, man.
Yeah, some habits never leave from your bodybuilding days. But you had your meal you were comfortable with. You were feeling good the night before going into it. You had shakeout run the day before, I think that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it was just a super easy 2-mile run. I mean, dude, I was rocking like a 9:30 with like a 130 heart rate. Like just super, yeah,
just comfy,
man.
So you got all this stuff going for you. Everything's great. The course looks like it's going to be flat, fast. Test yourself out. Hit that 50K distance, and feel good on the backside. Short recovery. Get out there and knock it back out as far as training goes on the backside of this.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I mean, we went into it. We talked about it before too. Like I was expecting, a solid 5.5, maybe 6 hours out there on the course, based off of my training and where I was in training and what we were expecting out here on this course.
So with that in mind, you get through your day before. We're driving out there to the race. We get there, get checked in, you get stretched out. We get set up in what was a super convenient and space-conscious place until everybody started parking around us, and then we realized we were in the middle of the road. But that's a different story.
I will say we were there before everybody else, and our tent was set up before anybody else was parked around us.
Correct. Okay, we'll leave that there. But regardless of that, I guess we're getting ready. We're getting closer. The sun's starting to come up a little bit, and we get ready to line up after the race brief to start this thing. Any changes of emotion, any nervousness in that moment whenever we're actually on the line? How did your mindset change? Because you're usually super cool, calm, and collected. Was there any jitters? Was there any elevated heart rate? What changed on race day specifically, since this is one of your first times towing the line in this capacity? Is there anything you noticed off the bat from that?
Man, still, I mean, I was still pretty comfortable, dude. I mean, like I may have had just a little bit of jitters, but nothing nothing that is like, oh, like I'm nervous. You know what I mean? It's probably more just anticipation, just get out there and get started. I was really looking forward to just getting out there and testing myself more than anything else. I find it crazy just how fast once we got out there, how fast like everything moved, and then it's like we were there and then we're starting. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And we got there with, I think it's probably about an hour to start. And by the time we got everything set up and everything, it was like, oh, shoot, here we are. And, yeah, that was it.
And there we go. And 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, go.
Yeah. Yeah, man. Big shocker, but sped out of there pretty quick.
Yeah, it tends to happen.
Well, and it's funny, like, backstepping just a tick, we get parked and we do see the sun start to come up, and we do see a pretty big hill right in front of us, and we're like, oh, there's a little bit of elevation there. And I don't know. I still didn't think anything of it. It's like, oh, that must be the one hill, right?
Yeah, it's not much. Can't be a whole lot.
Yeah, yep. And I don't know, man. Like, just once they started going through, it's like the race debrief and everything else. It's like, okay, yeah, good to go. And then boom, we're off. So it's super quick.
Yeah, super quick. You get taken off, and you're feeling good. You said you started a little bit hot.
Absolutely.
How was that first mile?
Fast. My first half mile was probably in the 7s. And
Beautiful.
then I was at the front of the pack, and then once we hit that mile marker, we're already starting to go up into the hills a little bit. And shortly thereafter, I was like, oh, these are not the people I should be running with.
What they're just running like mountain goats up there, or what?
Absolutely.
Yeah. Fair enough.
They're like just effortlessly, just like, I don't know, just gliding up the side of the canyon. And I'm like, oh, well, I'm sticking with y'all. But I look down at my heart rate, and we're in the 160s. We're in mile 1.
Yeah. Oof.
I was like, oh, that's probably some adrenaline. Obviously, I started off way too fast. And, at the start of the race, like, everybody's still relatively all grouped together. And so you don't want to just, like, I'm going to step off and let everybody else pass me real quick. Like, you're like, no, I'm going to grind it out for a few minutes. And once we get some distance between everybody, then you're like, all right, I'll slow it down a little bit.
Got you. So you pushed a little bit. You got some distance in between. Sun probably came up the rest of the way. And you're diving into that first out and back section of this course. Because you're feeling really good at that point, and it's cool. It was actually pretty cool that morning. When did things first shift, for the better, for the worse, mentally for you in that race? I guess did you kind of have that shift of going from the pre-race optimism, the initial like, all right, cool, we're here, we're doing the dang thing, to all right, now it's time to go to work?
Yeah. We mentioned elevation, and I think we hit quite a bit right up front.
Okay.
Going out to so let me think of how to word this. The furthest aid station was 8 miles out, and so that loop is essentially 16 miles. Well, I'll take that back. I guess it was 9 going out there was how far that was. Going out there though, that took like a lot of like your initial elevation. A lot of that was uphill, and within the first like 5-6 miles, like my Achilles were burning, my calves were burning, and I was like, oh, like this isn't just 1,200 feet of elevation. Like we've like this is a little bit more than what we were expecting. So
yeah,
it did set in pretty quick. As like this isn't gonna be a flat race.
Yeah. And at which point did you kind of dial it back and reassess, or how did you approach that whenever you figured out that things were different?
Yeah. I'd still say probably around mile 5, mile 6 is like, oh, like I need to actually dial this back. I need to rethink my game plan going into this. And, a lot of that too, obviously that dives into nutrition and everything else. I mean, there's a lot of different aspects that go into this. And pretty quickly at that point, it's like, okay, like if we're going to be as successful as we want to be in this, you got to start changing up your game plan. Because initially, we're thinking again, minimal elevation. We're gonna go out there. We're gonna run the hills that we can. If there's anything crazy, obviously, like on the original map, it looked like there's one like super steep incline. Obviously, we're gonna walk that one, right?
Yep.
But I mean, I was just going through. I wasn't running what I should be running. I was running with others. Just going through and just grinding through stuff that I shouldn't have been in the very beginning. So,
I got you. So you get through mile 5 or 6. You make your adjustments. When did you start hitting aid stations out there?
So your first aid station was at 4, and then you hit the one all the way out, which is at mile 9 technically, and then you hit the mile 4 again on the way back.
So 13-ish.
13-ish, but on the way back there's an extra loop that added in an extra mile that you didn't have to do coming back.
Okay.
And so it's 9 going out, and then whatever that is coming back. So
gotcha. So loops are roughly just under 17.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Gotcha. Okay. Makes a lot of sense. So you told me something about that, and I want to explore it a little bit. What was your plan with aid stations going out? I just want to talk about it. Just because I think this podcast is going to be a very good point of reference. And I think you did some things that you learned from. You did some things that you did extremely well too that we're going to touch on.
Mm-hmm.
But I just want to set this up for what this was a challenging race. It turned into a very challenging race for a number of reasons, but there was other things that came into it as well, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So I guess going back to your question, what did I do with the aid stations?
What was your plan?
What was my plan? Okay.
Yes.
So, man, I went into this, again, I was thinking, look, like we've had training runs, 26 miles. We've had a few out in the 20s, right? Like it's not crazy to get out there for us. And all of my runs, I've always had all of my nutrition on me.
Yep.
I was like, oh, well, man, I'll just go out there. I got all my nutrition on me. If I need something, then I'll stop at the aid station. If not, I'm just going to keep on going, man. I mean, I got it all on me. Why should I stop? And so you know what I didn't do?
What didn't you do?
Or what I did do, I guess, more. Yeah, I mean, I stuck with that. I didn't stop once.
Yeah. No stops on the whole first loop.
Whole first loop, no stops.
Okay.
So.
Which isn't super, like you said, you'd trained for that.
Yeah.
Under what you expected to be the circumstances to be.
Yep.
Not completely out of mind, out of
No,
reason.
I mean it wasn't anything out of normalcy. Again, if you compare it to like the training I've been in, right?
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, there's so many factors that you can't. I don't know what the words I'm looking for. Like you can't reiterate in training comparative to like a race.
Oh yeah.
And so, I mean, you're not like obviously you can go out and you can push as hard as you can during your training, but your body doesn't get amped up the same way as it does during a race.
Yeah, it's not the race day vibe.
Mm-hmm.
It's not the race day feel with the adrenaline, the hormones, the competitiveness. Because
that's a huge factor.
Yeah, and I know you and I both probably, whenever God created us, just like lost control of the competitiveness thing, dumped it right in there.
Yep.
And so that's something that plays a huge factor in my races. So
Mm-hmm.
to hear that it plays that in yours, I know that's something that probably pushed you to move past those aid stations still.
Oh, absolutely. Because I mean, again, this trail was all switchbacks and like steep up and downs all along this canyon side, basically. Like that's all it was the entire time. And so you're seeing, these individuals like right in front of you, and you catch up to them, and then there'd be spots where they'd make some ground back on you. What's the easiest place to beat them, man? It's a freaking aid station. You dang right.
When they stop.
Go ahead. Take your time, dude. I mean, I don't need nothing. I got all on me, son.
That's right. Oh.
And, it came to bit me in the butt.
Well, okay, sure it did. But learning experience.
Yeah, absolutely.
I guess within that, and why it was such a big factor is, when did the temperature start to really change? I know the sun came up and it got a little bit warmer.
Yeah. Man, I mean, I'd like to get your perspective on this too, because y'all were at camp, right? And so you're a little bit more present in like that side of things.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like, for me, like it was like we're in the sunrise, sun's coming up, got the cool wind blowing. I feel like 3 hours into it, So probably on the backside of me coming back is whenever it's like, oh, like it is actually starting to warm up pretty quick.
Yeah. So from our perspective, yeah, it was cold in the morning, like blankets, jackets, all that stuff, cold in the morning. And that's how we started the morning off whenever we sent you off. And then by the time you got back, roughly in the 10 o'clock hour, it surpassed that expected high of 75. It was probably in the upper 70s by that point.
Yeah.
And just as that sun kept going up out there, it crept up into the upper 80s. Mm-hmm. So heat became a big factor real quick.
Well, and then so I mean that's the other thing too. Like on those lows in that canyon, like it was like there's no airflow down there. There's no cover down. I mean, there's no cover whatsoever on this entire trail.
Yeah, there's no trees.
Yeah, big shocker. Panhandle. I mean, I don't know who would have thunk it, but I did not. So
yeah, didn't account for that.
Yeah, man. I mean, it got it. There's areas out there where it's like, oh, like this is hot. Yeah,
that's fair.
And I guess wrapping back around to the aid station stuff and nutrition just in general, man, my water intake really slacked on that first loop.
Yeah. Well, it was comfortable for a big chunk of it.
Yeah, I say slacked, but in comparison to what I intook on the second half, because I went through, I knocked out a full 2-liter bladder, I think is what that is, and then a 14-ounce flask of electrolytes, which 16 miles, not a big deal. As a matter of fact, that is probably that is more than what I intake during training and on a normal basis.
Yeah.
But on the backside, I ended up taking in 3.5 bladders and 3 bottles of electrolytes.
Yeah. So probably did some overhydrating on the back end too, but it got hot.
Dude, it was just so hot. Yeah.
So exposed. There was no cover, and it was just nasty. Mm-hmm. I ducked off in your second loop to go do some trail running to continue my training as well. And yeah, same story. No cover, sun just beating down, and me starting into my run a few miles in, my heart rate was already in the 160s as well, which is where we're at right now with the pace we're running and everything. Like Divin said, we're comfortable in the 130s to 140s heart rate wise for most of our runs. So that was a big shock to me. And I think at that point I texted you and I was like, hey, man, just keep grinding it out.
Yeah.
I'm doing the same thing you're doing on a smaller scale, and I am like all kinds of jacked up. This is a tough course. Just stick with it.
Yeah, dude. And so, there's so many different things throughout this that just kept reflecting back to like perspective, right? Mm-hmm. And that, I mean, there's some areas where it's like, if you weren't holding the right perspective, or if you were surrounded by others that weren't holding that perspective out there on the trail, like, dude, there's some down negative people out there on that trail for sure, especially when you get in those conditions and stuff like that. And at times, I mean, when you're grinding through some of the whether it's going through like one of those tougher hills, or you just can't get food down and it sucks. Perspective is everything, dude, for sure. So, but tying back into the heart rate thing, that was a big factor for me too, dude. I mean, like, as soon as I would start running, I would be 170s plus whenever it got hot. I mean, I was rocking zone 5 on my heart rate for 4 hours. Which is half of the race.
Yeah, that's rough. I do want to take a second and say something, not to shift gears too hard on you, but a little disclaimer, and I want you to chime in on some of the structure of the race. But Texas Outlaw Running Company is a good group.
Absolutely.
This was a good race.
100%. Yeah.
This was not. We're not coming in and bashing. They made some changes in the middle of this thing to adjust to nature. There was fires. They couldn't do nothing about that. Yep. They still put on a phenomenal race, a 2 out and back, which is cool because a lot of these become running 5 loops of 6 miles each or whatever, right?
Yeah.
So they put together a cool course in a cool place. And to me, the structure of the race, as far as getting everybody in, getting everybody checked in, caring for people, all that was good. And the aid stations, I assume they were good.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, there is support at all of them. They had everything that you could need during one of these races. So it was solid, man. Yeah,
so just wanted to throw that out there as we're going through this race that turned into a very different thing. It was still very good.
Yeah. I mean, let me preface that statement with, you may have a perception of what something's going to be, or like an expectation, right? And though it wasn't what everybody expected to be, like at least for me personally, it was probably exactly what I needed to continue to grow as a athlete, within this ultramarathon world. So
see, and I love that mindset because I think you hit the nail on the head whenever you talked about people being negative. Whenever you get out there, and it's one thing for a race to not be what you thought it was, but it is what it is on paper. And to get out there and for a race to not be what you thought it was because what you expected is not what the race is because of change that had to happen. It's easy to let yourself slip into a mindset of I got screwed or something, or poor me. This isn't exactly what I signed up for. It's kind of like what we saw with Michael with Brazos Bend getting moved to 7IL.
To 7IL, yeah.
Right, and there's so many people belly aching about it, but there is. I appreciate you saying that because it's like you have 2 opportunities here. You've got the opportunity to live in self-pity, or you have the opportunity to take it on the chin and say, hey, I can use that.
Yeah.
Because you don't get into a lot of hills right now down here in Devine. we don't get into a lot of cool. That trail was neat. I went and ran a section of it.
It's freaking beautiful out there, dude.
It's gorgeous.
And the thing about it is, like, one, we weren't in Briston's shoes, right?
Sure.
And how easy could it have been to be like, hey, guys, they've had some crazy wildfires up here, and I mean, we can't do anything. We're not going to hold the race.
Yeah, we're going to cancel it. Too much work.
Too much work. Like, that could have easily been done, and it just goes to show, like, how much they care about this community, too. For them to figure out a way to still put this on, I guarantee they probably lost volunteers over this as well. And so for them to just go through and again, just support the community and give us that opportunity to go out there and hit the trails and grow as runners and individuals. And, I think it's a testament to them and their commitment to us. So,
yeah, I agree. And man, that's cool to see. But now that we put that out there, said our piece we need to say there, you come back in from the first loop. You've gotten to see the whole course. You've steamrolled through these aid stations.
What was your thought? Because I came in and I was like, hey, I need a full kit. Like, I ain't got no water. I ain't got no food on me. And I haven't stopped at an aid station. And as soon as I said that, you're like, what?
I did because we talked about a couple of things before the race. We talked about run your race, be smart, stay within yourself. And I am the irrational one out of all of us. I am the wild card that will go out and try to burn down a 50-mile race without eating like hardly anything.
Yeah.
And pay for it. I am that person. I am the not as calculated, way more operating off of emotions and how I'm feeling in the moment. Like, I can't eat, so I'm not going to eat. Like, I don't feel like eating, so I'm not going to eat, kind of thing. And things like that. I'm like, that aid station's a waste of time. I'm not going to stop there. I can get back to the top.
Yeah.
That's me. You are more cool, calm, and collected and composed. So whenever you basically did what I always do, I was like, what? That was my mindset. That was where I was like, oh,
surprise.
Yeah, so like, But the reason I was so surprised is because I was like, man, it got hot. And I know you hit an aid station somewhere in that back stretch when it was already getting warm. Like man, be careful. Like, that was kind of where I was at with it.
Dude, I literally walked up to the aid station at the top, and they're like, "Hey, how can I help you?" I was like, "I'm good. I just want to say hi." And I turned around and left.
Fair enough. Well, so you've seen the whole course. You've moved through those aid stations. You've surprised Chance at the top by not hitting any aid stations.
Mm-hmm.
We got your pack refilled.
Mm-hmm.
What are you thinking knowing that after you went out to what was a challenging first loop, what was something that didn't go exactly as planned? What's your mindset with having to be there at the starting line where you can essentially check out if you want to? You don't have to go back out on this course. Nobody's got a gun to your head.
Mm-hmm.
What's your mindset with having to go out there now that you know it's hot, now that you know the conditions, the elevation, it's all way more challenging than we expected this race to be? I guess, one, how do you make yourself go back out there? Did you have any apprehensions at all? I know you didn't because I know you, but
No, I mean, there was no apprehensions. There wasn't any second thoughts of like, oh, like, can I go do this, or like, should I just call it quits or anything like that? You know, my mindset in that moment is like, dude, you got some work to do. Like, we gotta go do the work. We gotta go get it done. And that's what my mindset was. And like, I know that I was only at the aid station with y'all for what, like 5 minutes.
yeah, it really wasn't long at all.
But I felt like it was 5 minutes too long.
Yeah.
Like, I was just ready to like just get in, swap everything out, and get out. And I'm thankful that, you know, I did have those few minutes at the bottom with y'all. But I mean, I just knew that, like, again, there's work to be done, and I just need to get back out there and finish it up. So
Fair enough. Well, so then you take off back out of the aid station. You hop on the blacktop to head back out towards the trails and those canyon trails out there. So you're feeling like you got to go put in some work. Is there a spot in that second loop? Or I guess, how about this? Is there a different approach that you took in the second loop as opposed to the first one?
Man, so the entire second loop, I was really battling with myself, trying to find a rhythm for me that worked. Because I knew, you know, as soon as I would start running, my heart rate would get up into mid 170s, high 170s, at times low 180s, right?
Yeah.
And it's just not sustainable, like, regardless of how hard-headed you are. Like, you can go out there, you can do that, but you're going to burn yourself down on that trail, right? And for me, it was just trying to find a rhythm for me that worked, you know, whether it was, you know, running the downhills and the straights and walking up the uphills, or whether that was trying to, you know, work in just some intervals, you know, running for 3, walking for 2, and seeing how that worked. Or there's times where I was trying to walk or run for 1 and walk for 2 and see if that helps my heart rate some. And that was just the biggest thing that I never found a rhythm with it throughout that entire backside. That's what I was battling going back out there. And I knew that I had to try and find something. And again, like, I couldn't find anything but just nickel and diamond, you know, what I could.
Yeah.
And that's essentially what it came down to. And even within going through nickel and diamond everything, like, there are so many moments where it definitely tests, like, like, how present you are and how deliberate you're being out there on the trail, for sure.
So with that, I mean, that brings up a good point that I'd like to explore a little bit. In having to stay present, is there a time on that second loop where you did go to a more negative place or a tough place where you were uncomfortable with yourself? Because it is. You get out there and you're like, man, I've got to go 4 more miles out, and then after that I got to run 7.5 miles back in, kind of thing. Like, did you hit one of those low points out there that really made you go to a place you weren't used to?
Yeah, dude. There definitely was.
Yeah.
You know, I think what really started knocking me down was my nutrition. Like I knew I wasn't getting what I needed, but I wasn't like I just could not take in anything outside of my spring gels.
Mm-hmm.
Like I forced down some honey stinger waffles. I had another food source on me. I had some quesadillas that I've used in training a few times, and no issues there until race day. I mean, it's just hot. I couldn't get it down, and like that surprisingly, that had an impact on me mentally for sure. And I don't know if it's just like whenever you know that you're not getting the nutrition you feel like you should be, like you just feel it in your body that much more. Like I don't know if that's necessarily what it was. But early on, whenever I started having issues with that, I was like, well, crap, like we're gonna have to figure something out. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And then going through, and whenever I would go through and knock out some of those intervals, and I'd look down, be rocking like 180 because I ran for 5 minutes. I'm like, can't do that.
Yeah.
And so there's tough times out there for sure, dude.
Yeah.
I'm trying to think. There's one moment for sure where, and it was towards the end of the race, and I do regret asking, but I did go up to the last aid station, and I was just confirming, is like, hey, we are like 4 miles out or 3 miles out. She's like, yeah, you only got 4 miles. Those are the longest 4 miles.
I bet, dude.
And it just goes to show just like the perspective of everything. And once you start going through and you just start thinking too far ahead, then it really starts to mess with you because you're not there present in that moment.
Yeah. No,
So.
that makes a lot of sense. And you're always one that's really rational. Like I alluded to, you're very rational. And whenever we're running races in the past and we've got you on our side, whether you're crewing or pacing, you've always been one to be able to reel us back in, to use different strategies to keep the mind, whether it's mantras, whether it's yelling things, whether it's changing the mindset or the focus. Did you implement any of those tools while you were out there on the trail? Did you use any mantras, any repeated things that you said audibly out loud, or any mindset approaches in your head? And if so, what were those?
Dude, I ran through the gambit.
Yeah, I understand. Yeah,
there was there was times where I would make a deal with myself. I'd be like, okay, like here's this spot right here. This is all relatively flat or downhill. Like we're gonna go run from here to here, and then we're gonna walk. I'd look at my watch. Once I got to that point, all right, we're going to walk for 2 minutes. And then wherever we are, if there's a hill, then we'll walk up that hill. And then if not, then we're going to nickel and dime that section. We're going to run what we can. So there's a lot of areas where I did that. There's a lot of times where I would try to, turn my attention away from myself, but out to others. Like if I was passing somebody on the trail, I'd be like, hey, like keep it up. You're doing good. Just turning your attention away from others or from yourself and focusing on others, like takes away like your attention on you and what's going on with you, right?
Yeah.
And so that helps a lot. There are some times, dude, where I dove deep into prayer and just some self-reflection. And, I think that there's some things that God was trying to show me out on that trail for sure too, and speak to me. And then, there's other times where like I did struggle to stay present. I'd just be deep in thought of, whether it was me focusing on where I thought I should be, right? Because like I went into this thinking like, oh, like, well, I'm an hour and a half behind my time. Let me see what I can do to try to catch up to this. You know what I mean? Not realizing like first place didn't even get anywhere close to to our projected time that we were shooting for, right? But still, like just that self pressure, like okay, like I'm not where I feel like I should be, or I'd be focusing on after the race, or I'd be focusing on okay, well once I get to this aid station, what am I gonna, even though it's a few miles out, like what am I gonna need or want coming at that point, right? And there's if I had to guess, quite a few missed opportunities where I probably could have shaved off some minutes because I wasn't necessarily paying attention to like what's directly in front of me. Can I run this course, like this little section, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so and that just ties back into being present and deliberate on what's in front of you. So
Yeah.
which is tough to do at times, for sure.
It is. Yeah, it certainly is. So you get to the last aid station. You ask. They tell you got 4 miles left. You said it was a long, stout 4 miles.
It's a long 4 mile. This is probably the longest 4 miles out there.
Yeah, I believe it.
And it's because I asked the dang question.
That's what it is, man. And asking the question opens you up to the mindset and puts you in the mindset that you're ready for the end, right? And the anticipation of getting done and being able to be off your feet, not be in these conditions, getting the AC in the car, be around people again. There's a million and one factors that make that tough. But one thing I want to commend you on is coming off of the hill, coming out of there, and from the minute we saw you coming towards the finish line, you're running on blacktop. It is hot, but you look strong and you finished strong. You ran a solid race, and man, what was it like coming down that last stretch? You had family there. You had Kendall. You had, me. I wasn't wearing a suit, but I was there. What was that feeling? What were the emotions whenever you're coming down that last stretch? We probably could see you from about 0.35, 0.4 miles out coming around the bend.
Yeah, that's pretty dang close right there. Man, to me, it was, regardless of how the entire race went, I wanted to do everything I could in that last section to this race may have put a whooping on me for a lot of this, but I'm not going to finish weak. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I felt like crap. My legs were cramping. I was short on nutrition and everything else. And I did everything I could to I'm going to run the rest of this in. There's no reason why you shouldn't. And I hit a solid 194 heart rate coming in,
pushing it.
And I'm glad I looked strong. I don't know, man. It was kind of like a two-way thing. It's I'm done, but it's also well, dang, I'm done. The experience is over. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Back to the real world.
Yeah. And, it's something that I'm truly grateful for sure. And again, that just wraps back around to, it wasn't anything as to what I was expecting, but it's 110% absolutely what I needed, because it showed me areas of opportunity. I mean, if this was another course, with elevation like we have here, outside of the time constraint, I mean, what is that really going to show me? You know what I mean?
Yeah, I agree with you. I think, what was your overall time? Remind me.
It's 8:39 maybe, something like that.
8:39. Your winner came in, I think, at 6:57, right at 7 hours flat. So then there were some good runners out there.
Yeah.
Some experienced runners as well. But you're exactly right. I don't think you would have had any problem going out and running, especially based off of what we'd already ran in training, a 5.5 hour 50K. I think you would have been right on the dot. You would have been fine had the course been something that allowed for that. But I do think it's super important to note that essentially your time was about 3 hours longer, but you faced 3 times the amount of elevation.
Yeah.
You had temperatures that were roughly 20 degrees, probably whenever you calculate everything in, hotter than you expected them to be. There was absolutely no cover on the course. You had all the jitters, all the adrenaline, all the competitiveness playing factors in.
Yeah.
Man, to be part of this, I can honestly say that you ran a phenomenal race. You ran a great race. It was one of those experiences that I think, like you said, you learn so much and you feel like in some ways you didn't accomplish what you set out there to do. But, dude, it was awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, we like from the outside looking in, I couldn't be more proud of what you did out there because that was not easy.
Yeah, absolutely. I appreciate that, man. I really do. And again, like I was still in that mindset, is like, well, crap. Like I could have done this better. I should have done this better, right? And once results were actually posted, and I saw where everybody else stood, it's like, okay, maybe I didn't do that bad.
Yeah. How'd you place overall?
It was 11th overall.
Nice.
I think there were like 26 people that finished, and there was a couple DNFs. So.
Okay, so you're well above the threshold for being top half of the race.
Mm-hmm.
With zero experience, with some conditions that threw you off, and some approach and excitedness that played a factor in that too. But that dude, that's awesome.
Yeah, man. And again, it's something that there's still aspects of I'm for sure still process, like not necessarily processing, but just reflecting back on, and coming, not necessarily coming to terms with, but just being okay with, if that makes any sense.
Oh yeah.
And I don't think I would have changed anything about the experience whatsoever. And even if they would have had the normal course compared to the one that we had, I think I'd still probably choose this course.
That's fair. I could definitely see that from the outside looking in.
Yeah.
Well, that's beautiful, man. I do have a couple more questions for you before we wrap up this section of the podcast.
Yeah. What you got for me?
One, man, a couple of takeaways. What were your big takeaways from this specific event now that you've had some time to unpack and reflect on it?
Mm-hmm. It's something that I do say all the time, but perspective is everything.
It is perspective.
And
it's all perspective, I think is what you say.
It's all perspective, right? Mm-hmm. And that's something I very rarely struggle with. But whenever you're put in situations that make you actually practice that, it just reiterates that point that much more, right? There were times, like I said, there was times I was out there struggling, and whenever I was getting some text from y'all coming through on my watch, and whenever I was deep in prayer or just doing everything I could to be present, it just reiterated that point that much more, especially whenever, like, dude, there's a guy out there stepped on a cactus like first 3 miles, rolled his ankle on the other foot the following mile, right? And he was still out there. I think he ended up DNFing. But I mean, he was out there for all 8 of my hours at least. And he wasn't negative, right?
Mm-hmm.
But then there were other people out there that are just slugging it along on the trail, and they're just cussing the sun, the heat, that they were out there like audibly. It's like, I mean, like, what's the point of this if that's how you feel about it? You know what I mean?
Sure.
And so, again, just perspective is everything, and that was probably one of the points that was just reiterated so strongly with me, that is just proven over and over again, right?
Mm-hmm.
Couple other things, elevation training, not a bad idea.
Not a bad idea at all, brother.
There's some things that I got to get squared away nutrition wise. Now I know in a race type setting, super hot quesadillas ain't gonna work for me. But that's something that I wasn't gonna know until I was in that setting, right?
For sure.
And so, I was talking to my coach a couple hours ago actually, and we're going through some different ideas for nutrition side to get some stuff squared away on that end. And then the other thing is heat training, and there's some different things that you can implement for heat training outside of just running directly in the heat. Whether it's using some layers to kind of
simulate
that heat and you sweat and everything. And so, yeah, man, perspective, elevation training, heat training,
Yeah, it's getting
nutrition. So
being prepared for anything that can get thrown at you.
yeah, which I mean, all reiterates the point too. Like it's like that saying, dude. Everyone's got a plan until you get hit in the mouth.
Yeah.
And you know, it like I was hit in the mouth for sure on this sucker. And but I couldn't be more proud of like just the experience overall. Like I mean, it was just an enjoyable experience. You know, from the road trip to that Mexican food restaurant we stopped at.
La Arca, man. Yes, the Arc, dude. Man, hole in the wall restaurant. It turned out pretty good. My food was great.
It was good, man. It was good. And you know, but just the adventure, just overall, like the entire weekend was just really good, dude.
The Pancake House. Sorry, I had to throw that one in there too.
Yes, Pancake House slammed.
So good.
So
never ran out of coffee. Never ran out of nothing.
Mm-mm.
Well, dude, that's good. I love that you have that mindset. I love that you have that perspective coming off of it, and that you touched on so many just key things and wonderful elements of this ultra running world that are going to serve you as you go through and you get working towards these next big goals that you have. Because I know you got some big ones coming up, and we'll be excited to share those as we get further into them, I'm sure. But man, it's just the way it prepares you for those races, but the way it prepares you for life.
Yeah.
Putting yourself in those uncomfortable situations where you got to figure it out, man.
Yeah.
And sometimes it ain't so much the figuring out, it's just the enduring.
Just the doing.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it just reiterates that point too. Like nothing's permanent. Everything is going to come to an end at some point. You just got to embrace the suck, do the work, and get it done. So,
amen.
And then, you know, on the flip side of that too, it's also like, I just feel like we've become dull to like the idea of running some of these.
Yeah. The completion.
Well, no, it's like,
which,
it's like, oh yeah, like we just ran a 50K.
Are you talking about like the majesty of what this thing actually is?
Yeah. And then like you got to talk to, which like, it's like still to me, it's like, it's just a 50K. Like it's not a big deal. It's only 32 miles. Right.
Mm-hmm.
But then there's people that like hear you talking about it. They're like, what?
Yeah.
A long run for me is 3 miles.
Yeah. Wait a minute. Yeah.
I'm like, this ain't nothing. I got a buddy running 250.
Dude, I ain't done it yet.
But, well, no, but like, you know what I mean, though.
I
Like,
know
you just
exactly
become insensitive. I don't know what the right term is for it, but
no, I think you said numb. I think numb too. It's pretty good.
Yeah, it's like just 32 miles, dude. What's wrong with that?
So, yeah, that's just what we do.
Yeah. But let me ask you the same question, dude. You know, this was the. I mean, there's been a handful of races where you have been on the crew side.
There's been a few, yeah.
You know, did you have any takeaways for you? Like, I mean, Cocodona's 3 weeks away. I mean, was there anything that was like, just reiterated a point in your head or anything like that?
Yeah, I mean, there was a couple. One for me, it's like, it's almost awkward. It's almost like I forget what to do whenever I get on the crew side sometimes, you know, like I try to imagine where you're at, what you're going through, but it's also like I have a different mindset than a lot of people do in running. So I don't want to like assume your mindset is what mine would be. Even though partially sounds like that first loop at least you did. But trying to put yourself in the person that's running shoes is extremely important. What I would want, what maybe I would love to see, like the text messages and things like that. You mentioned they were a little boost and a little bump up for you for motivation or keeping your mindset right.
Yeah.
And remembering things like that. Remember how important stuff like that is. Remembering that when things don't go to plan, staying positive. Just enjoying it, letting people do their thing because they're going to be in their mindset and they're going to be in their approach. And while I'm kind of a control freak, so sometimes it's like you could come in from that first loop and things be different. I'd be like, all right, well, you need to do this, you need to do that, you need to focus on this, you need to focus on that, watch out for this.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the only thing I really, really told you was like, okay, we'll just like run your race and make sure you take this extra bottle with you and hit your aid stations. Like just take, like it was baseline, take care of yourself.
Yeah.
Right. So, which was different for me because I'm not the most experienced person in the world, but I try to take a coaching perspective on a lot of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And letting someone go through the process and the cycles and figure things out for themselves, that was something that was key for me. And as far as takeaways for Cocodona, there was some gear stuff, like the box that you have and things like that. I'm probably going to end up investing in something like that to stay organized for Cocodona.
It's pretty slick, ain't it?
Pretty dang slick.
Pretty proud of that sucker.
Old Magellan Pro over there. It's awesome. I've already convinced the wife to let me get one. So gear and mindset and perspective, and just seeing how you finish really strong. It's always inspiring to see something like that, because I've had races where I finished really, really well, and I've had races where I've walked across the line, or drugged myself across the line, you know, and kind of reiterating that point of what do I want to do? How do I want to approach this race at Cocodona? And I think there's going to be, especially in the first section of Cocodona, there's going to be an ample opportunity for me to do what you did and what I've done at so many of my races, and get excited, have everything flowing emotion-wise, and not catch that, hey, whoa, you need to get this under control until I'm deep into that first section.
Yeah.
So just some insights that I was able to steal from your experience there and live through those. But being on the crew side is something I'm learning to love a little bit more and enjoy the downtime, because I like, even part of me leading up to this was like, you know, I could sign up for the 25K and I can go run 17 miles or 16 miles and probably be back in time to support him and crew him the whole way I need to and all that. And it wouldn't negatively affect any of that. But also seeing, no, this is your experience. This is your time. I'm going to be here to support you how I can. I'm going to step back and I'll go sneak in a run where I can, but this is your jam. Let's do it.
Yeah.
You know?
Absolutely. No, I appreciate that, man. Absolutely.
Yeah. No, dude, couldn't be more proud of what you did out there. It's just cool to see. And last question around this before we dive off. I know we're deep into this sucker already.
No, anything.
How's recovery looked?
Good, dude. Good. We, you know, when was that run? I guess it's 3 days ago. I did a easy 3 miler this morning. Legs felt good. No issues there. I've stretched out a few times and you know, on the backside of that 3 miler this morning, it just kind of felt like the end of a long run, basically.
Yeah.
You know, a little tired, but everything felt good though. So, which is good.
That is good.
So, yeah, I think it's just kind of a testament to the training and the discipline that you know I've gained throughout this training block, but all of the mileage and building we've been doing over the past few months is just really a testament to that. Because I mean, you know, with how short I was on nutrition, with the environment of the race in general, and everything else, like, I mean, I could just be completely dead still right now. If I didn't have the base that Justin has helped me build, you know what I mean? And so I feel really good. I got a couple more just recovery runs throughout this week, and then just gearing up for pacing out of Cocodona after that. And so from here, you know, just focusing on recovery.
Yeah. Which recovery is super important.
It is, man. So, you know who our main recovery? I say main. You know who our only recovery partner is?
Who's that? Who is that?
That is good old Axis Recovery.
Man, look at that segue. Got this old hat here with the old AR. Stands for Axis Recovery there.
Got two good old boys over there. We got Chris and Kyle.
Yeah, where are they?
In the beautiful place, Conroe, Texas.
Conroe, Texas, just north of Houston.
Yes, beautiful is subjective, by the way.
It is. Yeah. It certainly is. But, hey, what's not subjective, it's a fact, is that they got some state-of-the-art, top-notch facilities over there in Conroe. And if you're anywhere in the surrounding Houston area, you should drop in. You should tell them Next in Line sent you by, Go get you a contrast therapy session. Go get you a
Mhm.
Normatec boot session. Get you a stretch session, whatever it is. And if you tell them Next in Line brought you by, you'll get 10% off of that old
Next visit. Yeah.
next visit, that bill whenever you go to check out.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, they got some good saunas, got some good cold plunges.
And they actually just had their grand opening, which went really well.
They did. They had an awesome crowd, some workouts, some other athletic vendors in the area, gyms and whatnot. It's exciting.
Yeah, I mean, we promote Axis wholeheartedly, and they're there to promote the community at the end of the day. It's not just all about them. They're there promoting other gyms, other recovery businesses as well, from IV individuals and stuff of that nature. I mean, they're out there just doing the thing. So
Yeah, I can't wait for them to franchise over here to the San Antonio area so we can be in there every single day. But till then, we'll keep dropping in every chance we get, and y'all should too.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. So stop on by Access Recovery.
There you go.
Cool.
Well, man, we have successfully recapped the West Texas Ultra and Mr. Lane Divins' segue into joining the ultra running community.
Mm-hmm.
Brought the celebratory jacket out.
I'm stoked, man. Like, again, I've always been on, like, the crew side.
You have.
But now I'm on the runner side. And now, I've just been involved in all aspects of it. So
yeah, and look forward to diving deeper with you.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, dude. Yeah, we got some goals on the horizon that'll be talked about one day, just not today.
Teasers. Well, but now that we got that knocked out, brother, what do you say we continue this journey in the gospel of Jesus Christ with Matthew chapter 14?
Matthew 14. Yeah, dude. Let's do it.
Do you want to take a brief second and say, hey, we did not drop an episode last week.
Mm-hmm.
We didn't give any warning. Apologize for that. But there were some personal things that popped up. We were both extremely tight schedule, had some things not going in a conducive way to knocking out the podcast, and we didn't feel like we could drop something to y'all that was going to be the quality that it needed to be. So here we are now, continuing chapter 14.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's the thing, dude. Like, with us, we're gonna whenever we do this, we try to be wholly intentional with what we are talking about and the community that we're trying to bring up, right, to create within Next in Line. And so we don't want to just throw out something that's just going to be thrown out to see if it sticks to the wall. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so, here we are.
Here we are. If y'all would like to join us in this conversation or through this journey, what we invite y'all to do is go ahead and read Matthew chapter 15 this coming week, and we will be dropping a podcast this coming Wednesday with that as the main topic. Of course, we'll talk about some other things, probably some running and some debrief from other things we got going. We got a Cocodona meeting this week.
We do.
And some fun stuff going on in personal life too. So we invite y'all to join in. That's the main purpose of what we're doing here, is to explore the Gospels, and it's been fun. So
yeah, absolutely. Well, let's dive into 14, man. I didn't get a chance to say earlier, but it's nice being back in the podcast studio.
It is very nice.
It's very nice, and just getting to dive into Scripture. 14 is a short chapter with a lot of big things.
Yeah, very dense. Short chapter, but very dense. I agree with you, brother. You want to lead the way. What you got?
Man, so off the bat, John the Baptist is beheaded.
He certainly is.
And I feel like that is something that's kind of like downplayed, or maybe not downplayed, but it just like wasn't given like what you would think for like the regard that John the Baptist is held in, right?
Yeah, he's a prophet, right?
It's just like, oh, beheaded, and then move on.
Yeah, and
I mean that's how I kind of felt about it. I don't know if you do, but
I think so. I think there's some deeper context in the whole situation of how he was beheaded that we can discuss. But yeah, I agree. It's kind of a sharing of a fact of his death and where it was played in the story of this. Don't get me wrong. I know this is a story of Jesus Christ, but like you said, John paved the way. He was the very important prophet, and he baptized Jesus, and he was the one that let everyone know that the Son of Man was coming, that Jesus Christ was coming, and really laid the foundation for what was going to be Jesus' ministry.
Yeah.
Along the way. There was an interesting topic that I saw in here on the study, and then I've watched a little bit with how John was killed, because it talks about in here, Herod had arrested and imprisoned John as a favor to his wife Herodias, the former wife of Herod's brother Philip, because John had been telling Herod, it is against God's law for you to marry her. Herod wanted to kill John, but he was afraid of a riot because all of the people believed John was a prophet, right? So he didn't want to do it. And furthermore, there wasn't necessarily anything that John did wrong besides criticize Herod, right? So in many ways, he was an innocent man, but he was imprisoned and he was put to the side so that the attention wasn't continuing to be called upon this relationship that Herod was in. But then the reason that Herod ends up killing John, there in verse 6 of chapter 14, Matthew, but at a birthday party for Herod, Herodias' daughter performed a dance that greatly pleased him. So he promised with a vow to give her anything she wanted. At her mother's urging, the girl said, I want the head of John the Baptist on a tray. Then the king regretted what he had said, but because of the vow he had made in front of his guest, he issued the necessary orders. And one point that was made was that the dance that she performed was probably something that created other sinful desires within him. It's something that was laid out in one of the studies, right?
That's something I heard too, yeah.
So if it just kind of illustrates the point of once that path of sin is not squished initially, it wasn't rebuked by him, it wasn't put off by him, he kind of steered into it, right? And he embraced that path of sin, and because of that, he promised anything she wanted, because of the way that made him feel in the pleasures of the flesh. And what it ended up leading to was more snowball of bigger sin with the beheading.
Yeah, it was a pretty big domino to fall.
Yeah, exactly, right? It is, but it shows kind of how this plays into regular life too with you and I, that, man, it starts out very small. It starts out as a small thing. Just take lying for effect. You start to tell one little white lie, and it's no big deal.
And it builds up pretty quick.
And it builds up. And next thing you know, you're doing things you're not supposed to. You're places you're not supposed to. And it is. The sin just grows and grows and grows to a point of just getting worse and worse. And along with that, the more negative impact it has on your life. Right?
Yeah, absolutely. I think so oftentimes, too, it's like the significance of something so small, like the impact that something, like a decision that small, like can have just over long term.
Yeah.
And so, and like, obviously this isn't like a small decision, but we can see that small decision played out many times in our own lives.
We can. No, I absolutely.
In multiple different facets. So
I agree. Man, moving to that next section of verse 13 where Jesus feeds 5,000, it says Jesus heard the news and he left in a boat to a remote area to be alone. But the crowds heard where he was headed and followed him on foot from many towns. Jesus saw a huge crowd as he stepped from the boat, and he had compassion on them, and he healed their sick. Got 2 pages stuck together, sorry.
No, you're good.
Then that evening the disciples came to him and said, "This is a remote place, and it's already getting late. Send the crowds away so they can go to the village and buy food for themselves." But Jesus said, "That's not necessary. You feed them." "But we only have 5 loaves of bread and 2 fish," they answered. "Bring them here," he said. Then he told the people to sit down on the grass. Jesus took the 5 loaves and 2 fish, looked up towards heaven, blessed them, and then breaking the loaves into pieces, he gave bread to the disciples, who distributed it to the people. They all ate as much as they wanted, and afterwards the disciples picked up 12 baskets of leftovers. And he goes on to say about 5,000 men were fed that day, in addition to all the women and children.
That was a point that I wanted to bring up too. It's like it defines the 5,000 men and then includes the women and children there as well. And I guess depending on the study, and correct me if I'm wrong based off of what you've heard, but it's actually ranges of like 15,000 to like 25,000
Yeah.
were estimated to be there. And everybody ate until they were satisfied.
Off of 5 loaves of bread and 2 fish.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it shows the power, and it shows the blessings of God. And I think it shows kind of poetically how that little bit of faith can multiply out and affect so many in such a positive way too.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Yeah.
Kind of one of the takeaways I love from that passage there. And it's having the faith to take what we have, though it might not seem like enough. We always sit here in life, and I'm probably the world's worst about it, staring at what else I could have, what more I could have. And there's times I get caught up in, man, I could do so much more. I could be so much more. I could provide for my family so much better if I had this, or if I was able to achieve this, or if this came into my life. But kind of a beautiful reminder here to take what we have, our bread and our loaves of bread and our fish, though it might seem like it's not enough or it's small, and we can take that and turn it into something wonderful. And it's more than enough if we have the faith and it's used right. Right?
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely, man. No, it's just and this isn't the first instance that we've heard of this either. And so it just reiterates that point too. Just like the power of just having that faith. And so
yeah.
And then, moving on to the next section, Jesus walking on water, which is pretty wild.
It is pretty wild.
And I guess something that I want to touch base on is like whenever I'm going through and reading this section, like I wasn't necessarily envisioning like a pond, but maybe something a little bit bigger.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then you do some research on it. It's like, oh, like, no, he walked like miles out into the water.
Yeah.
It wasn't just a pond out there in the pasture by the house. Like
it was a sea, brother.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, we can go through that section for sure. So, you want me to go ahead? I mean, it's not a long section.
Dive in, man.
Immediately, Jesus made the disciples get into the boat and go on ahead of him to the other side while he dismissed the crowd. After he had dismissed them, he went up on a mountainside by himself to pray. Later that night, he was there alone, and the boat was already a considerable distance from land, buffeted by the waves because the wind was against it. And that's another point too. Like, it's not just like calm waters.
Yeah.
Like, there's a storm of brewing out there in the sea. You know what I mean?
There was.
Then he goes on to say, shortly before dawn, Jesus went out to them, walking on the lake. When the disciples saw him walking on the lake, they were terrified. It's a ghost, they said, and cried out in fear. But Jesus immediately said to them, take courage, it is I, don't be afraid. At which point Peter replied, Lord, if it's you, tell me to come to you on the water. Come, he said. Then Peter got down out of the boat, walked on the water, and came towards Jesus. And, I mean, I guess let me read this next verse too, and then I'll say what I want to say. So Peter got down out of the boat, walked on the water, came towards Jesus, but when he saw the wind, he was afraid, and beginning to sink, cried out, Lord, save me. Immediately Jesus reached out his hand and caught him. You have little faith, he said. Why did you doubt? Dude, I mean, so that one little paragraph right there, like, was there anything that stood out to you in that section?
Oh, absolutely, man.
Of Peter having faith and then losing faith all in the same moment?
Yeah. Seems kind of familiar.
Yeah. Yep.
Highest of highs to lowest of lows, man. And I mean, I think it's a beautiful example. And man, I don't want to just go off on rants here either. If you get a point, holler at me. But what's so important to me in that section is that Peter's right there.
Mm-hmm.
If you want to talk about rock solid proof, he is with the Messiah. He is with Jesus Christ. He is with Son of God. He has watched him walk and approach this. He recognizes his voice. He's familiar in this moment. He has all the confidence of, this is the Son of God, and I'm walking towards him. He is absolutely operating on faith, don't get me wrong, but there's a little bit more tangibility to his situation. A little bit more, quote unquote, certainty. And that can be argued, don't get me wrong. But he walks out on faith and starts on the water. And something comes along that causes fear, causes uncomfortableness, causes whatever it is in his life to take his focus off of Jesus. And once he does, he begins to sink. He begins to fall. He begins to forget about it. And his faith wavers, right? And for us to be going through this life and being operating solely off of faith, to not have the tangibility in front of us, like, it's so easy to get down on yourself and beat up yourself whenever you have that faith waver. Whenever you look up and you've been like, man, I haven't read my Bible. I haven't prayed in a week. Like, I've been trying to walk this path and I'm falling short. Like, what is wrong with me?
Yeah.
This disciple, this apostle, who knows exactly what has happened. I think by this point in Matthew, he's gone out and he's performed miracles because he's been granted the power of God as well. He has all the proof in front of him and tangible evidence of who this man is. And for a second, because of the wind, because of something that comes in and causes him fear, he doubts. He loses his faith. So for us to expect that we're going to be perfect in our faith all the time, and to be so hard on ourselves and so challenging and just brutal towards ourselves for this little wavering bit of faith. Like, I think this is a prime example of showing us that we've got to continue the path. But at the end of the day, we have to rely on Jesus to save us. Obviously, he pulls Peter out of the water as he starts to sink. We have to rely on Jesus, on Christ, on God to save us.
Yeah.
But we have to understand that this world, like, we're put here for a reason. With all the temptations, with all the things, we're going to endure seasons and days and weeks, whatever that time frame looks like, of loss of faith.
Yeah.
Little faith, whatever you want to call it. But we have to continue down the path. We have to continue to understand that regardless of that, regardless of what happens in this world, Jesus Christ is sent to save us. And we have to put our faith and rely on him.
Yeah. Yeah, man. I mean, there's going to be so many times where we do fall short of that, right? But knowing, this story just, like, in and of itself, like, he has him in front of us, or he had him in front of Peter, right? And he still lost that a little bit. Like, it makes it, like, it gives you that perspective of, like, this is going to happen and it will be okay.
Yeah.
Like, I don't have to be a perfectionist with this because you're not going to be.
Yeah.
And you can't hold yourself to that standard. So.
Man, that's exactly how it hit me. And one thing I wanted to ask you, whenever you hear you have so little faith or you have little faith, what does that mean to you in that moment?
It just makes me reflect back on so many times where it's like, I'm going through challenges or difficulties in my life, and it's just like that doubt's like instantly there. You know what I mean? But at the same time, it's like, to finish out that sentence, why did you doubt? It's like, why did you not trust me? Like, I got you. We're going through this for a reason.
Yeah. And
it's just keeping that in mind, like, this is an opportunity. I mean, we can reflect that back to the race. Like, no, this is an opportunity for me to grow and to have faith in the process, or have faith in Jesus and God, right?
Yeah.
I mean, that's the entire purpose behind it all. And we can't do it by ourselves. So.
No, that's exactly how I read it, right? And that's exactly what it means to me. And I think it's important because, like, there are times when we have quote unquote little faith. And then I heard another interpretation of it from a pastor. And I thought it was something worth mentioning on here. And it reminded me of it whenever I read it. Of so little faith. There's another perspective of such young faith.
Mm.
And I didn't think about it like this at all. But I do like this interpretation as well because it does stand true as well. I, in a lot of ways, am still young in my faith. I've always had a level of faith in my life. But as far as a true, deep level of faith in my life, very young.
Yeah.
So, more so, there's going to be times whenever I am prone to fall back into my old ways. Because I listened to a podcast with Shia LaBeouf, and I know everybody thinks he's crazy and all that stuff, but hear me out. Something he said really struck me because he talked about prior to finding his faith, he was his own God.
Mm-hmm.
He was the one making everything happen. He was the one that caused all of his success. He was the one that checked all the boxes, got everything done, right? That was his mindset. He was the one calling the shots. He was the one making it happen. And so I think it's so easy to slip back into that. And an example of that is whenever we slip back into, well, I'm the one.
Mm-hmm.
I'm the one walking on this water here. The wind comes and the fear comes and everything like that. And I've got to figure out what to do. So then I'm in these crashing waves. I'm in these winds. And I'm trying to swim under my power. But we got to remember that's not what it is.
Yeah.
Right? And I am the world's worst about that. And that's why I bring that up. Because I'm still such young faith. And I forget that. It's not that I forget. It's that it's not the habitual thing for me to do yet.
Yeah.
To place my faith in the right place.
Well, and coming from the side where, you know, you feel like you are the one going through making those decisions, I mean, it's a hard transition, is it not? I mean,
It's extremely hard.
Like you've known nothing else, you know, throughout all the other times, and so making that transition over and just having faith and letting what is be, then I mean, it's difficult.
It is difficult.
And so that's the other thing too, is that, you know, so many times, you know, we may pray for certain things, but I feel as though the prayer of asking for opportunities to increase your faith would probably be a pretty scary thing, or is a scary thing. Because, I mean, you don't know what situations or opportunities, depending on how you want to look at it, right, that God may bring your way to be like, okay, like I'm going to give you this situation to build your faith, like increase your faith in me. But, you know, whenever you're going through those scenarios, it's so often is it easy to just lose sight of that.
And if you're adding to that and living that, I'd want to make sure that this is reiterated too, that if you're genuine, if you mean it in your heart and your soul, that you want the opportunity to grow in your faith, you want God to show you what it is that you need to do to become who you need to become to walk with Him, I think that, I know that you better buckle up. You better be ready for what that is, because what that's going to do, it's just going to, if you're true with it, it's going to find the parts of you that you're most self-conscious about. It's going to find the parts of you that you've tried to bury down. It's going to find the areas of hypocrite within you. It's going to find that tendency and that nature of you to fall short, but be okay with falling short, because it's not as bad as someone else's version of falling short. And it's going to take those and it's going to bring those to the forefront of your mind. And it's going to weigh on you and it's going to be heavy. And I've lived this, and it's not an easy thing at all.
Yeah.
But I think that's something we have to do and we're called to do.
Yeah.
To explore those things. But when you do, be ready.
I mean, it again just brings back the point of like, if you're comfortable where you're at, I mean, are you actively trying to grow? Like, does that make sense?
It does.
Like, I mean, I don't know. I'm a believer in that if you're comfortable where you're at, it's either because you're complacent a lot of the times, or you're not willing to, step out of your comfort zone to continue your development. And this area, in my opinion, is no different than it would be, something physically or like a mental challenge or whatever that may be. You know what I mean?
I agree. Yeah.
And so, it all depends on your intentionality with it. And, like you said, once you pray that prayer and your intent is wholly there, then be ready.
Yeah.
And it's not something that should scare you either.
No.
I feel like that's something that should make you run, like, that should entice you. Like, you should be running towards that if you want to continue to dive into growing this relationship or diving into your development and continuing to grow and fulfilling your potential or whatever that may look like. It's not meant to, like, scary things I don't know about. Like, I don't want to be like, don't let that type of stuff scare you. It should be motivation. Like, I want to run towards this. I want to see what I can gain from this experience.
See, I agree with you. And tying it back into your race as well. I mean, it's exactly what you said. You 110% took away a lot of great things, growth, opportunities, positivity from this race because of what it was.
Mm-hmm.
But that's because it was uncomfortable and it was challenging.
Mm-hmm.
You could have gone and ran your 50K race and done your 5.5 hour time and had a good experience and learned some things.
Mm-hmm.
But you were put in a situation where you had to see a lot more of yourself. You had to be exposed to the parts of you that you weren't fully aware of, maybe. You were uncomfortable with. You hadn't had to face before.
Yeah, like areas that aren't routinely challenged as much as they were during this.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So, and that's what you're going to do with this.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think at some point in every person's life, they have to explore that. They have to go there. And it's with faith. It's with physical health. It's with their career. It's with their marriage or relationship. It's with their relationship with their kids. And I think that as long as you're afraid of going to that place of discomfort, as long as you're avoiding it, as long as you're not taking steps out in faith and walking where you have to walk, you're going to be stagnant. You're going to leave those things on the table and you're not going to reach the potential that you have. Mm-hmm. Because, guys, I was somebody that masqueraded in success for a long time. I would find an area that I could exploit. I would climb a ladder. I would career-wise be the most excelling young person I could be and climbing the corporate ladder to get into positions that nobody was at my age and things like that. And it was checking the boxes.
Mm-hmm.
But I was avoiding the tough things. I was avoiding the actual areas that would highly impact my life and forever make changes. And since I've stopped that, since I've started walking the path I've walked, and this has been a multiple year journey getting to this point now. And I would say that those challenging times and actually deciding to make a difference has been the absolute most beneficial and prevalent times in my life in regards to success.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, I mean, and if it hadn't have been, then I think that at that point you'd be able to question, where was your heart at within it all, I guess.
I agree.
So.
Man. I think the only thing left and really in chapter 14.
I say, what are some closing thoughts you have on 14?
Man, just even going through that in verse 34, after they had crossed the lake, they landed at Gennesaret. I think that's how you say that.
Looks right to me. But so did Sad Duckies. So.
No sad ducky. When the people recognized Jesus, the news of his arrival spread quickly throughout the whole area. And soon people were bringing all their sick to be healed. They begged him to let the sick touch at least a fringe of his robe, and all who touched him were healed. And I think it just continues that walk of faith.
Yeah, and something that literally just came back to mind whenever you read that last verse. So so often, like whenever these individuals are getting healed, he continuously says, by your faith, you've been healed. And so, going through people literally just begging to touch the edge of his cloak, and they are healed by that. Like that just reiterates that point too. So,
yeah,
it's by your faith.
By your faith. That's the root.
Mm-hmm.
The purpose.
I was about to go down a side tangent, but I'm gonna hold my tongue on that one.
What you got, man?
No, I mean, like I feel like it also begs a point of like so many times we're looking for a sign, which contradicts the faith itself, like your faith. Like,
it does.
Oh, God, show me a sign, or once I see this, I'll know for sure. And like, I mean, I do it so often too, but that's those moments, like that's so plainly in my mind now. It's like that was a moment where my faith wasn't there because I'm looking for something tangible versus just having faith.
Yeah.
So that is just a last thought that I had. So
fair enough. I think that's good, man. I appreciate you sharing that. And man, if y'all got something out of this podcast, I know we shared a lot from the running to Matthew chapter 14. We'd ask that you just share the show. Leave us a rating or review on the podcast platform you're on if it'll let you do it. Subscribe so you know when we drop podcasts in case we miss a week. But share the show with somebody. Take a screenshot, post it on Facebook, Instagram, whatever you do to spread the word about what you like to hear, what you like to put in your ears. And we greatly appreciate it because that helps us grow and helps us know we're moving in the right direction.
Yeah, absolutely. And on top of that, if you're going through and you're doing some hard things in your life, whether it's training or anything else, and you're just looking for some folks to be a part of it, include us in that.
Yeah.
This is a community all about y'all that we're going through and trying to build and be a part of. And, we want to see all the awesome things that y'all are doing as well. It's not just about us. It's not just about our races. I'd say even more so it's all about y'all. And so include us in those.
Yeah, we love to lead by example, and that's exactly what we try to do is just do challenging things and show what the body's capable of, what people are capable of whenever they put their mind to changing or pushing towards a goal. And that's really where we love to live. I couldn't have said it better, man. It's about y'all, genuinely.
Yep, absolutely. Well, cool. Well, guys, other than that, we'll wrap up with a prayer, and we'll kick it on from there.
That sounds good.
You want me to rock it this time?
You want it or you want me to?
Doesn't matter, man.
You tell me. I led the last one, so you tell me.
All right, yeah, I'll rock this one.
All right.
You good, man?
Yes, sir.
Dear Heavenly Father, Lord, we just thank you for this time of getting together and talking about Scripture and just diving into it. As brothers in Christ and as a community, Father, we ask that you are with us throughout this week as we go through all the opportunities that you present us with. Just help us keep in mind, the faith that we're supposed to have and show. And Father, I pray that others can see you through us as well, God. I pray for protection for everybody, and just help us lead the way. We love you and we praise you, God. In your name we pray. Amen.
Amen. It's good, man. Love it. Well, I appreciate you doing that.
Absolutely.
Guys, that's how we love to close this podcast now. I think we're going to do that going forward. And, hey, we'd love for y'all to be a part of that too. So, guys, if y'all have any questions, comments, concerns, you know how to reach us. Drop it in the comments, probably the best way. You can also shoot us DMs. But other than that, you ready to wrap this thing up?
You done right, son.
All right. Y'all get out there. Do challenging things. Push yourselves. Grow in your faith. Explore these areas of spiritual, mental, and physical, and always be prepared for whatever is.
Next in line.
All right. Thank y'all.
Adios, folks.